Okay, we are live. Welcome back to this YouTube channel. This YouTube channel has been inactive for a while now. I have to apologise on my end. We were supposed to do a T20 World Cup review. I have cricket myself, so I cannot do that in such time, so I apologise for that. But however, there was an ODI series going on between New Zealand and India, and then whenever New Zealand play, we like to get our good friend Michael all the way from New Zealand. Thank you, Michael, for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome.
Okay, and we're here to review the first ODI match at Eden Park between New Zealand and India. New Zealand won the toss, decided to bowl first. And Michael, India got on with almost perfect start in the first 20 overs. Really dominated the New Zealand bowlers, putting up a very good, I think it was a 124 wicket stand for the opening partnership.
Yeah, they did. But they were a little bit cautious, I think, at the start. And they didn't quite score quickly enough. And then when they did get some momentum on, they lost wickets and then went back into their shells again. And I think they misjudged this pitch. I think they decided this was a 280 pitch, whereas I think really it was a 320 pitch. And the result of that was that they just didn't get enough runs. And they went too slowly. Washington Sundar came in at the end, played an absolute genius innings. Yeah. And, they were looking like 270 was about where they were heading. And then he played an absolute golden innings. Just what you want an all-rounder to do at the end. He accessed the long boundaries, managed to hit the long boundary rather than playing cautiously. He actually took it on. Now, the thing with Eden Park famously, really short straight boundary. So famously, but still actually really relevant, quite a long square boundary. So the square boundary at Eden Park is actually, it's not MCG long, but it's still actually one of the longest square boundaries in the world. So you've got the shortest straight boundary, but you also have quite a long square boundary, and it's rectangular. So you hit to square leg, to mid wicket or extra cover. That's actually a really long hit. You're looking at depending on what the angles, sometimes it can be an 80-meter boundary on the angle. There's not many grounds that actually have an 80-meter boundary that you're hitting that direction. They're normally 75 is a long boundary. So Eden Park has some long boundaries, and that's with the normal setup with the pitch in the middle. Because of the concert that had been there a little while ago, they decided to move the pitch over a little bit. So it wasn't perfectly in the middle, meaning that there was one boundary that was a bit shorter on one side and one that was really quite a long boundary. And so what that meant is that the scoring was, for both teams, it was a really clear pattern. They scored at roughly a run and a half to 2 runs an over faster from one end than they did at the other. And when you're playing, at domestic, at club level, you see that sort of thing happen all the time. Yeah. But normally international players are good enough to work around that. Yeah. But there was such an advantage with the wind, a strong wind coming from one end and one short boundary, both playing in the same way. It meant India didn't, because of maybe not having many left-handers in their top order, they didn't access the ability to hit to both sides. So it meant that there was very much at one point they were going at 6.5 at one end and 3.7 at the other end. That was after about 20 overs. So it was very much a case of they were going too cautiously with the big boundary on the leg side, and I think that held them back.
Well, going by India's top order, Shikhar and Shubman Gill, they all got very good starts, but they weren't. While they did get a lot of runs, got 50s to 80s, as you pointed out, their run rate, their personal strike rate, wasn't all that flush compared to Washington Sundar. He just came out and just went all guns blazing. So was that, to me, that's probably a lack of judgment from the openers.
I think some of it was some of it was also that Matt Henry bowled really well. You know, like they got one run off his first 2 overs and it was a wide. You know, and it was actually good bowling. It wasn't that they were being too cautious. So I've possibly got to give. I've got to give them. I was perhaps a little too harsh on that, but there was a distinct. You know, Shubman Gill, his 50 off 65. Well, I think he was 1 off 9. So at the start, he really went into his shell, and then he accelerated later on. And Shreyas Iyer as well. He was a bit slow to start with, accelerated later on. Pant was the same. He was a bit slow. Once he started to accelerate, he got out. And Sanju Samson actually batted really well. I thought his innings was quite good. But when Washington Sundar came in, we got to see actually what you could do on that pitch. And Eden Park, it's a risk versus reward ground. It really, if you are brave and it comes off, you can do very well at Eden Park. But the ball swings, the ball seams, the ball spins, you get bounce. There's everything in the favour of the bowlers except for the boundaries. And so, if you take the risk, you can get messed up pretty quickly. As a lot of teams have found out. There's a number of teams that have been bowled out for 150 at Eden Park because they've seen the boundaries, eyes lit up, and bang, 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 they've suddenly forfeited next to nothing. So it's that risk versus reward, but they perhaps didn't adjust quickly enough to the fact that they had a bit more in the bank. They possibly could have gone a bit sooner. But then I guess they've got Umran Malik, Ashdeep Singh, and Chahal with the 3 left. You don't really want to be giving them too many balls to face. So.
No. Well, as you mentioned, that it seemed like before Sun Washington came out that they were kind of content with the 270, 280. As you said, they probably misjudged the pitch. But with Washington's late hitting, Samson to an extent run a ball 36, hit some fours. They really got up to 306. So India, as you just said, they probably were very happy with that. Considering that they probably misjudged this pitch. With the bowling side of New Zealand, you said that Matt Henry bowled extremely well. Economy rate was the only New Zealand bowler under 5, so he bowled very well. How did you see Adam Milne's game?
Oh, I thought Milne bowled really well. I for his first ODI in 5 years, I think it was. I mean, that's he played really well. I thought his some of what he did there, he took a lot of the hard overs as well. That he bowled when the opposition were on top, and tried to peg them back, and he bowled from the hard end. So this is when India were going pretty well. He came in his 3 overs from the difficult end, the easy end to score from. He went for 4, he went for 1, he went for 2, he went for 2. Now, he had a couple of expensive ones that went 9 and 11, but that's what happens when you're bowling at that point. And some of those were edges that went for 4 and things like that. I thought he bowled really well, and he's probably not in the first choice lineup because Lockie Ferguson's just slightly better at the same thing, doing the same skill, and he gets injured so often that you don't want to rely on him. But he is a very good bowler.
Yeah. Also, Tim Southey, kind of a mixed bag. Went over 7 and over, just over 7 and over, but picked up 3 wickets. But the wickets that he picked up, excluding the tail ender, he got out the 2-set batsman. So how did you see his bowling performance?
Yeah, again, he bowled his. You've got to look where he bowled his overs from. Yeah. He bowled 7 of his overs from the difficult end. Yeah. And so you expect him to go for more runs. Santner and Henry bowled almost all of their overs from the other end. Mm. And so, you expect them to go for less. Santner, I thought, actually bowled really well. It was a bit unlucky on had a couple of mishits go for 6 because just the short boundaries. He on a bigger ground, he would have probably had 3 for 35 or something. He bowled well enough for that. But no, I thought Southey was quite good. He went for 13 in one of his overs at the death, but you can't. There's not too much you can do about that. You're playing at the death. You've got a guy that's swinging at everything. Some of them are going to come off. No, I thought he bowled all right. Look, I remember I was hearing Shane Bond on the TV saying, he said, "There's no one really in either team bowled particularly badly." And it's you normally, when you've got 300 plays 300, you can say there's been a couple of guys that have really bowled poorly, but it wasn't really a case of bad bowling. There was some things that could have been done better, but it was really a case of this was a hard place to bowl, and the batters played really well.
Indeed. India making 306 for 7. In response, Michael, New Zealand shaky start. They lost a couple of quick wickets early. 3 for 86 at one point. You thought with Williamson came Tom Latham, and you think, this could be very tricky. They did this very easily, Michael. They made this look extremely easy.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I saw that the bookie, or Bet365, had India as quite strong favourites after the 20 overs, and I put some money on New Zealand because I just thought I just don't think that this is. I think New Zealand are well in this game, and so that worked out quite well for me. But you already
live near harbour, Michael, so you might as well keep going. Just living the luxury life.
Yeah. Well, it's I'm not a big spender, I've got to say. A big bet for me. It was a big bet for me. It was $5 instead of my usual 50 cents or $1.
Touche.
And to be honest, my betting is simply because Bet365 allows me to watch most games for free without having to pay for the subscription service. But I've got to make regular bets, so I bet enough to be able to keep my account open. That's really all I do. But I saw that and I thought, I'll put some of that play money on there, because it just seemed to me that New Zealand had to play quite badly from that position to lose the game, and a little bit surprising that Tom Latham did so well. He's normally better when the ball keeps low. One of the strengths of Tom Latham and New Zealand team is that he normally does well on the pitches where other people don't. So if you've got a pitch that it's a 230 pitch, you back him to score 80 or 90 on that pitch. But you've got a 300 pitch, he normally gets out cheaply. So this was actually a big innings for him against a top team on a pitch that was a bit quicker. It had a bit more bounce. Doesn't really suit his game, but he played. Normally low and slow is where Tom Latham thrives. So this was an impressive innings from him, and he did some things very well. He accessed both sides of the wicket. So whatever the side the bowler was trying to get him to, they were trying to cramp him up, and he was backing away, or then he was coming inside. I think some of the wide calls were pretty generous towards the batsman from both sides. I think there was a couple of times where if the batsman had stood still, the ball would have hit them. They moved inside the line and they were given a wide. And I thought, that's if the ball would have hit you in the knee, it's not really a wide. So I think that's something that's. I mean, they did it for both sides. I thought it was a bit harsh on the New Zealand bowlers, and then I saw them doing exactly the same thing for the Indian bowlers, and I was like, well, I still think it's too harsh, but at least it's even. This is consistent. But yeah, I think that's. I think if it would have hit the batsman if they hadn't moved, it shouldn't be a wide.
I agree with that 100%. Actually, yeah. Incidentally, this was Tom. Speaking about Tom Latham, this was his debut 100 ODI 100. I think, Michael, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's the 7th. It's the 7th.
Sorry, 7th.
Yeah, so he's got heaps of them, and for someone that bats at number 5,
that's what happens when you rely on Google, ladies and gentlemen. You make yourself look like stupid.
He got one in the last game. I think he got one of the last matches he played against Netherlands. Okay.
But what I can say, Michael, in that spectacular 100, he hit 24 boundaries. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's it. What he did is he looked at how the pitch was set up and said, right, well, we're at Eden Park. Eden Park's a boundary hitting ground. I'm going to defend the good balls, and I'm going to try and hit the bad ones for 4 or 6. And he made the most of it. When there was a ball there, he whacked it. And he played some delicate shots. His reverse sweep was quite good. He played about 4 of them. I mean, one of the back of the bat sweep that he played. I mean, it's a bit of a showy shot. That's one that but it worked for him. It was and he was able to access the parts of the ground where there were no fielders. So what a headache for a captain when you've got a guy who's suddenly he's hitting the ball in an area where you're completely not expecting it to go, and using the back of his bat to hit it, or he played a straight drive over the keeper's head for 6. Now you just think about that for a second. That's not a normal shot.
Sure. You can only dream of doing that, Michael.
Yeah, well, it was a cross between a ramp and a drive. He just basically got into position for the drive, was into it a bit early, so just flicked it up over the keeper's head for 6 and over the side screen. I mean, that's the sort of thing that you dream of, having something like that happen. You don't expect that to happen. Anytime. No. That's not something that you can plan or prepare for. You've got to be just seeing the ball really well, and it's got to be really your day to be able to play a straight drive over the keeper's head for 6.
The man of the match did go to Tom Latham. However, his batting partner at the other end, Kane Williamson. We won't forget him. He was tremendous with his runnable almost 100. Very unlucky at the end. Just ran out of runs to play with. He was just as fantastic, Michael. A lot of criticism has came under Kane Williamson, especially in the T20 World Cup, which I think has been very unfair. Yes, it's a World Cup, but we have to put in perspective that that's not Williamson's best format. But gee, goodness me, he was fantastic today, Michael.
Yeah, well, I think the thing you've got to put in context with the T20s is that he was often playing the way that suited the team situation with the players that we happened to be with. There was a game against Sri Lanka where he said, he batted too slow, 40 off 40.
Yeah, rubbish.
Yeah, but and there's absolutely right. 40 off 40 is too slow. Yeah. Or against England? Was it against England? 40 off 40. And it's like, that's too slow. Except that he was batting with Glenn Phillips, and Glenn Phillips was going at 2 a ball.
He was hitting boundaries over left, right, and centre.
Yeah. So with him rotating the strike and letting Phillips do that their partnership strike run rate was over 9 runs and over, and that was what New Zealand needed to score at. So they were doing the right thing. He was just basically rotating the strike, hitting the single, letting Phillips hit the boundaries. Now, is that bad batting? I don't think it is. I think that's good batting. What we saw today was, again, it was a showpiece of good batting. Now, the interesting thing was that that Williamson was, I think, on 79, and it was something like they're both on 79 together, something like that. And then Latham just went nuts, and
Latham went nuts. Yeah.
And so poor Williamson, he needed 21 runs out of 70 or something, and he didn't get it. Latham then went 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. And it's like, that was that's changed the complexion of the game somewhat. It was but I mean, it was a brutal innings from Latham, and it's just not. It's a different sort of brutality than we're used to seeing from him. Williamson was on 73 and Latham was on 77. In fact, Williamson was on 72, Latham was on 69, and Williamson didn't make it to his 100, and Latham got close to a 150. So it was very much a but it was also, but Williamson actually scored it a run a ball in that partnership. It's just that Latham scored it much faster, and because he wasn't hitting singles when he got on strike, Williamson didn't get to face any more deliveries that over.
So, I think Latham will be shouting him the first round of beers the next session. But like I said, we won't forget his fantastic 94. Knowing Kane Williamson's perception, he will not care about this one little bit. The team won. He batted well. Latham batted well. And New Zealand, they did this very, very easily. They did this in the 47th over. Now, from the bowling side of India, how did you think they went on this pitch?
Well, look, I think there was a bit of inexperience in terms of just like little things like Saini, not Saini, but the Malik. He'd bowl if he got hit for a 4, the next ball was almost always a bouncer, and then the one after that was a Yorker. And that's really good cricket at junior level. But you're playing against guys that are reacting before they're deciding what shot to play before you let go of the ball, because they're reading your body language. I mean, I had I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I got to hang out with the Black Caps on a tour of the West Indies, and I almost ended up playing for them when they had so many injuries. They were down to only, they said there were 4 New Zealanders in the Caribbean that weren't a member of the team that were not injured. And I was like, they were just trying to see if they had a jersey my size so I can go out in the field, which would have been incredibly embarrassing. In the end,
I don't know how to explain. I don't know how to cover that one. Talking to you about that with you, Michael. Thank God that didn't happen.
Oh, that would have been awful. Fortunately, there was an Olympic sprinter who happened to be in Jamaica at the time. They got him on the field. He was brilliant. He was covering the ground magnificently. Very athletic, much better than me. But yeah,
they would have just put you in slip, Michael, where they literally put those kind of people in.
No, they would not have put me in slip. They would have put me at fine leg. I would have been going fine leg to fine leg. They would not have wanted me to be touching the ball. But yeah, no, that was. And I really would have only been coming on the field when someone needed to go to the toilet or something like that. That's all it would have been. Someone changes their shoes. I'm on for an over at fine leg. But it was but one of the things that was really interesting is the batsmen were talking to each other about the tells that the bowlers had. And they were talking about how the bowlers put the ball into their hands. So they were watching them as they were coming back when they're putting the ball, and you said, and one of them saying, you can see if he bends his wrist back when he puts the ball in his hand, it's going to be a quicker ball. If he's holding his wrist forward, it's going to be a slow ball. So they're picking up on these things. And one of them saying, oh, you can tell by the way his shoulder comes through 2 steps before he delivers the ball. When the shoulder comes through a little bit earlier, that means he's going to be doing this. And they're incredible at picking up on those things. So, being predictable the way that he was allows the batsman extra time to be able to play you. So there's those little things that at an international level, you're going to get found out. So we saw a little bit of that. We also, I thought Chahal bowled wonderfully. The figures didn't show it, but I thought he was absolutely magnificent. But he had a couple of good players of spin there, in Latham and Williamson, 2 guys that are both pretty good against spin. And he really did have Latham in trouble a couple of times. Yeah. He beat him in the air. He beat him off the pitch. But he's quick enough reflexes and he was in the right position that even though he did it, Latham was able to adapt to it. He would have got a lot of lesser batsmen out with the way that he bowled there. So Shardul Thakur and Arshdeep Singh, both of them looked really good with the new ball, when it was swinging. But the second that stopped, they're missing a weapon. And I think in this situation, they probably should have bowled more up the front. And India need to have a bowling option in their batting lineup. With no one in there that's a genuine bowling option, it's really a weakness for them that if someone's having a bad day, or you don't have the option of matchups, you look there, you don't really want to bowl Chahal at these guys if you can help it. So you want to have someone else bowling a couple of overs to mean that you can shuffle your bowlers around at the end, and you can avoid putting on bad matchups. They didn't have anyone to bowl those 2 overs in the middle that could have been the difference. So, I think that's a problem for India. I think that their balance is a little bit out, but I don't know what you can do with it, because that probably is the best batting lineup they've got based on the squad they've got.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So New Zealand won by 7 wickets with 17 balls left. They chased 306 down. Moving to the second ODI, Michael, any changes you would make for that up in, I think it's Hamilton?
Well, I mean, this is, in some ways, we're building towards the next World Cup, right? And New Zealand, I don't know if this is part of the Super League, the series, or if this is just a friendly series. But
I've had enough of those in Australia with England, mate. Let's not start that nonsense. I've got a gut full of them here. I hope so.
Yeah, well, I think if it is Super League, then you're sort of winning. It's quite important.
Of course. Yeah.
If it's not, then I'm just trying to bring up the World Cup Super League. Here we go. Let's just see if this was actually part of it, because that's 12 and 4.
The England and Australia one was probably the less meaningful series known to mankind. No one turned up.
That wasn't part of the Super League. So, it's interesting. New Zealand's net run rate took a bit of a hammering in the series against Australia. So New Zealand were miles ahead on net run rate of anyone else, and that Australia series did not help that. 3 losses. So, this is part of the Super League. So it's important that New Zealand get some good scores on the board here, just in order to make sure that we guarantee our position at the World Cup. I think probably with 12 wins, we're pretty close to doing that, because 9th place is Ireland, who've got 6 wins and only 3 games remaining. South Africa, Sri Lanka have got 6 games left with 6 wins. South Africa have got 8 games left with 5 wins, but South Africa are forfeiting 3 of them, so they're unlikely to win those ones. So they go. None of the teams that are below 8th are likely to overtake New Zealand now. So that's probably not a consideration, except that it's nice to win things. So really, it's about building up. So I'd like to see Michael Bracewell give it a go against the better batsman against spin that India has. I'd like to see Mark Chapman maybe given a go with the bat. I think that there's some, he did quite well against Pakistan and then got dropped for the World Cup. Didn't play, and then came back and played 1 game batting at number 3 in a T20, and it looked all right before he got out. You can't tell much from that. I'd like to see him actually have a bit of a run there, but at the same time, getting some runs on the board for these guys before our tour to Pakistan, not a bad thing. I like the fact there's Finn Allen's opening. I think I would like us to have a 6th bowling option, and we've got that in Daryl Mitchell. We just didn't bowl them. And Glenn Phillips. Both of those are bowling options. I would love to see them be given a couple of overs. just to actually put some pressure on them. Is all you can bowl as much as you like in the nets. It's not the same as doing it in a game.
No.
So
Trent Bolt rested, I believe.
Kind of rested because he turned down a New Zealand contract. They've said that they're not going to pick him for series where they don't feel that it's vital that it's won. So that's or they're going to be limiting how many series they pick him in as a chance to bring through some players. Now I sort of look at that and go, well, a left arm seamer is a really important thing in international cricket at the moment. You need to have one, and we don't have one. We've got two very samey bowlers in Ferguson and Milne, and then the backups are Tickner, who's kind of similar, and Sears, who's very similar. Sears is probably slightly quicker than either Ferguson or Milne. It looks like at the moment he's genuinely lightning, and you see him. Some of the highlights packages of him just leaving batsmen in pieces on the ground, out hit wicket because they've fallen over after being hit by the ball, or the bats knocked out of their hands into the stumps. That sort of thing as you hit them on the fingers. That's pretty exciting from a fast bowler perspective. And he's only 22, but he's 22 and he's injured. We've got this type of bowler coming through, which is great. But I'd like to see maybe Ben Lister, who's a left arm pace bowler that swings the ball in like Trent Bolt. I wouldn't mind seeing him be given a game. Maybe this is not the series to do it. Putting him in against Suryakumar Yadav and Shikhar Dhawan, Shubman Gill, you've got a pretty good chance of ruining someone's confidence if you're not careful.
Exactly. Yes.
But I wouldn't mind seeing us trying to find someone who can do that role. So I think that would be a useful thing to have.
So that was the review of the first ODI between New Zealand and India. New Zealand, as I said, won by 7 wickets. The second ODI will be on Sunday, I believe, at Hamilton.
Just down the road.
With Michael, just because we couldn't do a show with the T20 World Cup, as I said, because I had other commitments. What was your overall thoughts of the T20 World Cup?
I thought it was a great competition. Look, I think what you saw is when there's something in it for the bowlers, the game is so much better. When there's an even contest between bat and ball, and you don't know what's going to happen because there's, you don't know if it's a good score or not. That's when cricket really shines. I think when it's pretty obvious that this is a 180 pitch and they've got 170, we know what's going to happen here. That's not so interesting. And so we got to see actually good T20 cricket. And it was good. It was really good to watch. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the competition a lot. I like the fact there were some upsets. I think what it said is that T20 is actually a good format because you want upsets. The best sport has always got an element of skill and an element of luck. And cricket has that. And it's just got a little bit more in the T20. The best teams end up winning overall. It's hard to say that the top 4 teams were 4 of the 6 clear best teams. There are 6 teams that are clearly better than the rest, and those 6 teams made up all 4 of the semi-finalists. The best teams got through, but there was still plenty of opportunity for upsets. I thought it was a good tournament. I like the change to the format, to having it a bit wider. But I still think, I didn't like the first round, second round thing where those teams were almost like West Indies and UAE were sort of almost not playing in the actual World Cup because they got eliminated in the first round. I didn't like that. I didn't like it last time. I didn't like it when the Champions League did it. I know financially is the reason it's sensible, and that's a real consideration because a World Cup's there to make money for the development of the game. And look, the game is definitely developing, so you've got to say it's working. But I think it'd be nicer to have everyone playing Everyone's starting at the same time.
Okay. Sorry about that. Gate Crusher. Overall, what did you thought of New Zealand's T20 World Cup?
Look, we didn't play enough games to really know. You know, the fact we had one of the games rained out, it's meant that we played 3 games in the round robin, and then we played a semi-final. 4 games. What can you say about that? We had a couple of good ones, a couple of bad ones. I feel we played 4 in them ones, so maybe 5 games. I thought it was an above average performance, but not much above average. You know, it was a solid B. I think it's never a fail if you beat Australia. But it wasn't, and you make a semi-final. You take that at the start of the competition. But from where we were at the start, it was disappointing that we went out so tamely to Pakistan.
Because it's a T20, Michael, I'll let you get away with that. I won't be so kind if it's a test match. But anyway, Michael, thank you so much for giving us this review of the ODI and a little bit of the T20 World Cup. We look forward to seeing you hopefully on Sunday as Game 2 will be on. So for that, Michael, thanks for coming on, and we really appreciate your input.
You're welcome. Hey,
on today's game.
That's right. Just on the game at Hamilton,
Sure.
Hamilton is because I know a lot of the listeners and watchers won't know the New Zealand grounds very well. One of the things with Hamilton is it's kind of a traditional sort of shaped oval, except the pitch isn't in the middle. The pitch is all sort of off on one side on an angle. So you've got some really short boundaries and really long boundaries. Again, a little bit like Eden Park, but just in different directions. Hamilton tends to swing and spin quite a lot. So it's a really good ground to go in. But the other thing, I know the light, people in New Zealand, Australia know all about the ozone hole. That means that we get skin cancer and stuff. There's less atmosphere above us. So we get the sun stronger. The result of that is it's really hard to see the ball in some places because the sun is brighter. And a lot of batsmen struggle. Have described, like Matthew Hayden said that he thought Hamilton was the hardest place to see the ball. He found it really difficult, and he scored 189 there. So it obviously wasn't that difficult. But there are some grounds that it's hard that it can be difficult to see. And when the ball swings at Hamilton, you see batsmen looking really, really average because they struggle to pick it up. So going into that game, just keep an eye on that. As it swings at the start, batsmen look completely foolish. Don't think they're out of touch because they struggle to pick up the ball early in Hamilton. If they get through that period, they can often then go on to score really well because of the short boundaries, because of the fairly good pitch. It's one where batsmen often struggle to start and then go on well. So if you're watching, don't switch off just because they've made a bad start. It is the sort of ground where it can be hard to start, but it gets easier and easier to bat as you get along. So I just thought I'd throw a little bit of a preview in there because I'd imagine most people don't know that much about those grounds.
Well, there you go. So he's saying Tim Southey will take 5 wickets.
I think, look, it's not unexpected for him to pick up a couple in Hamilton. Although I think actually he's got a terrible record in Hamilton, despite being his home ground. I think it's something like that.
You just gave me all these stats about swing bowling. Now you're saying he's got a terrible record at the ground.
I think I could be wrong, but I think he's the one exception. Bolt has an amazing record in Hamilton, but there's one of the bowlers who you'd expect to do well there who doesn't, and like the rest of them have all dominated in Hamilton. There's one of the swing bowlers who's just always struggled there. It's interesting seeing Southey bowling one day again, actually, by the way, because he was dropped from the ODI team and now he's back and a key member of it again. And it's good because his numbers had gone downhill pretty quickly. in one-day cricket, and he's looking like a one-day player again. So that's good to see.
Okay, and that will what I will say. Any final thoughts, Michael? Anything you wanted that upset you during this match, or you thought that's interesting? Any final?
Well, yeah, the one thing I would say, look, I might bring up this for 2 seconds. I'll see if I can figure out how to do this.
Yeah, of course, mate.
Because
Absolutely.
right, this is going to take me 10 seconds to see if I can do this.
That's fine.
Window, that one.
By the way, how is the domestic cricket going in New Zealand?
So it's only really just started. Has that sharing come up now? Can you see a graph instead of me? Or
yeah, we'll add that to this. We will add that to the screen. Yeah, there we go. There we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Look at that. Okay. So what I've done here is, because of the way that the wind was happening at Eden Park and the short boundary, I broke it up into the odd overs and the even overs, and looked at it rather than, because like in Manhattan you can't really tell, and you could see just how much easier it was to score at one end than it was to score at the other. So both New Zealand and India going along at, roughly what we got there. We're over 100. We're about 170 from the 25 overs at one end, and about 130 from the 25 overs at the other end. So, you're looking at very much one of them going at, 170 is 7 and over, and 100 and the other one's at 5 and over. So 2 runs and over difference between the two ends. And that's the sort of thing that captains and coaches are actually looking for and targeting, that we don't always see in the stats that are getting presented on TV and that sort of thing. And I thought it was quite an interesting, and you can see the over of 25 from Latham that changed that all of a sudden the game went from being fairly even to being one-sided. So
you see that 130 marker just went skyrocketed upwards. Yeah.
And so so the 19th over with the even ball, which was over 40, that was where it happened. But it's interesting that you could sort of see how both teams were tracking fairly similarly until that point. And the pattern in scoring was fairly similar for both sides. So there really was. That's the sort of thing that the captains are looking for, and they're trying to get their matchups. And you look at that and you go, oh, well, this guy went at 6 and over and this guy went at 5 and over, so he obviously bowled better at 5 and over. But if he was bowling at the 7 and over end, 6 and over is actually a pretty good result, whereas 5 and over at the 5 and over end is just what you'd expect. So stuff to think about. I just thought I'd share that before we.
No, that's content we actually do want to see for our viewers that will be watching. No, we really appreciate that graph, Michael. Thank you so much.
I made it on my phone, so it's not as pretty as it might normally be, but that's.
Oh, I think we can see that pretty well, Michael, and you're selling it extremely well. So we do thank you for that and your contribution for that. Anyway, thank you, Michael. We will end the broadcast now. Thank you for reviewing this game and a little bit of the T20 World Cup. We do really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Right, we'll catch you around.
No problem. Don't forget to add Michael on Twitter. You can add me on Twitter as well. We always enjoy your feedback, and we will see you hopefully at the second ODI. Thank you, guys, and goodbye.